Welcome to this panel entitled The Future of United Nations Engagement in the Middle East. I'm Lucia Goracci. I work in RAI, which is the public radio television, and I'm very glad to be here with our distinguished speaker. On my right is General Stefano Del Col, who has been head mission and force command in UNIFIL. UNIFIL is a United Nations interim force in Lebanon. We are going to talk about it today. And Nimrod Goren, thank you for being here, who is senior fellow at Middle East Institute and co-founder of Diplomats. The war in Gaza has put the United Nations in a harsh spotlight about its capabilities to navigate the complexities of the region. It has been criticized both for not be capable to stop the violence, not be capable to ensure accountability. There have been frequent comparison with Ukraine, the apparent robust international support for Ukraine, if compared with Gaza and after with Lebanon. Skepticism has grown among the international public opinion. Nevertheless, United Nations keep being in the region a crucial actor for everything which involves the humanitarian aid, shelters, medicines, food, water, not just in Gaza or Lebanon, but also in other areas. I'm thinking about Yemen, and for the peacekeeping. And we start from here because the news of the day is this ceasefire agreement reached by Israeli and Lebanon government. You must know the main points. We have 60 days to enforce the Israeli withdrawal out of southern Lebanon, Hezbollah with its military capability withdrawal north of Litani River, with the involvement of UNIFIL, which should monitor the ceasefire and the arrival of more Lebanese soldiers, Lebanese troops in the area. Generale Del Colle, what is the first evaluation of this agreement?
I think that first of all, we have to welcome the ceasefire because it went into effect early this morning. And they put a hand to the violence of and the sufferings of the people of both countries. We shouldn't forget that, I mean, at least 80,000 Israeli that withdrew from the northern village, so the north part of Israel, across the blue line, and the same happening in the south of Lebanon. I mean that now there is a necessity to keep respect of the ceasefire. Ceasefire doesn't mean peace, it doesn't mean a peace agreement, of course. And peace doesn't mean it's the contrary of war. So peace that we wish that I mean, everybody wishes that the two countries will be able to sign on a peace agreement in the future. But this is the first step to stop the violence, and then we will see.
And you, Israel has agreed this time with a difficult but almost unanimous vote in the government. And we have the framework of the Security Council Resolution 1701 that was not enforced. Israel complained about this since 2006. What is your evaluation?
It's a very positive development. Okay, we've been suffering a year plus of a war that, as was mentioned, impacted so many lives, so many people, both in Israel and Lebanon, setting aside Gaza for now because that's a separate issue, with a lot of diplomatic efforts that until now failed time after time. And I think the ceasefire agreement reflects that diplomacy can work and that wars can end. And that's a very important message, I think, for people both in our region and within the international community. The American and the French mediation was very much appreciated. I think now we are entering this phase in which there is a lot of sensitivity about how will that agreement be implemented on the ground. There is interest among different sides to see that succeed, and that's a positive aspect. And if it succeeds, it shouldn't be the final step because we have other issues to move forward on between Israel and Lebanon. The land border, for example, enhancing engagement between pro-peace people from both countries, but also we should not forget what's happening in Gaza and the aspiration to end the war over there and to bring back the Israeli hostages. President Biden yesterday said he's committed to try to do that before the end of his term, but I think on Gaza, given the policies and the gaps of positions, it will be much more difficult from Lebanon, but at least let's make Lebanon succeed and the ceasefire hold.
I've listened to some interviews you released this here in Rome, and you were focusing the attention of the attempt of Israeli government to unlink Lebanon from Gaza. They got it.
Yes, and Israel got some major achievements during the war, primarily the weakening of Hezbollah. Hezbollah was considered for years to be the most significant immediate threat on Israel around its borders. Yes, it's an Iranian proxy, but it sits on our border. And there was a lot of very difficult scenarios in the Israeli public debate about what will happen if Israel and Hezbollah enter a war. And eventually Israel showcased that it had the upper hand over Hezbollah, and despite the massive rocket attacks that came into Israeli territory, that was very different than what people anticipated. So Israel managed to dismantle the Hezbollah capacity or to infiltrate the northern part of Israel, to do like October 7 from the north. It managed to go after the leadership of the organization, after its offensive capabilities. So Israel achieved much on the military side, but it's also achieved the linkage between Gaza and Lebanon. That was not the case for months, but now is definitely the case and opens up different opportunities. And that's partly why there was such a broad support for this deal within the Israeli government, even given its right-wing composition.
During the fighting, General Del Col, UNIFIL has been hit both by Israel and Hezbollah. On the basis of your experience, which is very recent, tell us something about it. What are the main challenges?
Well, let me start with a little bit of history, because UNIFIL, the eye of UNIFIL is interim, is United Nations interim force in Lebanon, but is nothing more than permanent than UNIFIL, because it was established in 1978. At the time, it was, after the Litani War, there was one of the, I think, the second invasion of Lebanon made by the IDF. In the Litani operation, and the withdrawal, so there was established UNIFIL with the two resolutions, and 425 and 426 in 1978. At the time, it was a really monitor mission. And afterwards, in 1989, in Taif, they discussed the Taif agreement. The focus was to reform the Lebanon political system after the civil war. And the second big issue that has been discussed in Taif was to disarm and dissolution of all of the militia, except one. And the one was Hezbollah. In 2004, the resolution 5059 recalled the necessity to establish the Lebanese armed forces has to establish a control of all countries. All of the mission has to leave the capacity, military capacity, and so on. In 2000, the Israeli withdrew from Lebanon, and then they have been there from 1982 to 2000. In 2000, the UN, they was, in a hurry, draw a line, and it's called Blue Line. According with the others lines, one was the Sykes-Picot line, the second one was the 1948 and 1949 agreement, the peace agreement line. And in 2000, in less than 4 months, the UN with a team drew the line. And the line was used a map, 150,000, so it means that the 1 centimeter on the map is 50 meters on the ground. So the necessity was to mark the line. And marking the line is a big and very difficult process. We have the tolerance of 50 centimeters, and so the two teams have to allow with and mediated by the UN to decide where the pillar has to be built. And we have 13 areas that is still in, as I say, the contest process, so we have to discuss that. And the Lebanese doesn't recognize the line that is between Lebanon and occupied Golan, so it means the Sheba Farm. At that time, in 2000, the Lebanese armed forces, instead to control the south of Lebanon, they remain in the north of the Litani. I said that was the second problem. Anyway, so in 2006, we have we know perfectly after the 45 days of the war, the UN and the Security Council passed the resolution 1701. 1701, the number of the troops increased, the mandate changed, and the UNIFIL was created, like they say, the UNIFIL number 2. But let me say, because sometimes we have been, under discussion within both parts. So the Israelis say that we are not able to control the weapons of the Hezbollah. The northern part of the government of Lebanon say that we are spying on That's when the Hezbollah say that we are spying on behalf of Israel. The Lebanese say that we are not able to stop the Israeli air violation. I mean, the Israelis say that we cannot investigate in a proper way. So both countries, both governments are quarreling against the UNIFIL. They say that if you're quarreling against UNIFIL, both means that they are doing well. And then so
we as a journalist say the same.
We keep and we maintain the peace from 2006 until a few weeks ago. And but at the political level, let me say that the UNIFIL has never had a mandate to promote a lasting peace. It's not our role. It's not our role. The role to promote the peace is from the parties, from Lebanon and Israel. And we mediate, also is mediated by UNSCOL. UNSCOL is the political mission in Beirut. Is a special coordinator based in Beirut. And then he and she now, he has a proper role to deal with the peace process, not UNIFIL.
And as far as I know, sorry if I interrupt you, as far as I know, you don't have in the mandate, you don't have, for example, the right to make raids and disarm Hezbollah.
Exactly. Let me say this. So we monitor all of the violations, and we report the violation to New York. New York, every 4 months, the Secretary General signs a report on implementation of 1701. It's a public. So you go to the website of the UN, you can withdraw all the reports. And in the annex report is written all the violations committed by both parties. I mean, in the Israel, the IDF, and also Hezbollah. And UNIFIL suffered. We lost, the peacekeepers lost their life in south of Lebanon. So we have a big incident in 2007 with the 6 peacekeepers who lost their life because they blown up with an UXO. And also we suffer from a few other incidents. So what I want to say in we are, so the only, the mandate that we have is to report a violation. We cannot get inside the private property. We cannot investigate inside the Lebanese authorities. Who is the space owner, as we say in the military terms, is the government of Lebanon. So we ask the government of Lebanon to investigate. We cannot do properly. So, and many times in 2018, when we find the tunnels that cross the blue line, so I asked the government of Lebanon to allow me and by peacekeepers to investigate in certain area where we know and we presume that there was the entry point of the tunnels. So we were never allowed to do that. And so we report we sign on a few reports and address that to the party in New York. So that is really important because we never were free. We never enjoyed the freedom of movement because when we passed in a certain village, we have been blocked for the side and everything is written. So no surprise, no surprise. Sometimes that I heard by the parties of journalists say, "Oh, why UNIFIL is not control the weapons of Hezbollah?" Because it's not the mandate. We cannot do that.
Nonetheless, you make a very crucial activity. I was in Lebanon in October and November, and all the aid distributed in the south was with the indispensable help of UNIFIL. I would like to ask Nimrod Goren, first of all, if he has something to comment. First of all, the comments on this crystal clear explanation of the rule of engagement of UNIFIL in southern Lebanon, and then introduce a topic that we cannot forget, these difficult relations between Israel and the United Nations, the suspect, the accusation on UNRWA involvement in 7th of October, the decision made by Parliament to ban UNRWA starting, if I remember correctly, 20th of January. That would have a great impact, not just in Gaza. I visited many schools of UNRWA in West Bank from Bethlehem and they have an important role in educating hundreds of thousands of Palestinian children, not just in the West Bank and Gaza. Guterres named persona non grata and so on. So what, in your opinion, is at the origin of these great difficulties, and if there is any perspective that can be solved?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll begin by relating to some of the words of the general, because I think you reflected a lot of the difficulties, both in terms of even understanding of what the mandate is, and if those accusations are happening within the broad policy levels, imagine how the publics on different countries could be mobilized to see the UN as some kind of a hostile or failed agency or people interacting. So there's not a lot, I think, of acknowledgement of what, by definition, is the role of specific UN agencies. What is the UN in general? You know, in the Israeli society, often people accuse the UN of all kind of resolutions, but eventually the UN is comprised of member states that have their decisions and cast their votes. But if we look a bit at the UNIFIL and the security dimension, I think it's important to define the security role and the political role, okay? Because on the security role, we started beyond the monitoring, and now with the ceasefire deal, there will be additional actors in the international community taking some of the responsibilities for monitoring. So now we have the Americans and the French and maybe other European countries, and those were traditional things were in the UNIFIL domain. So UNIFIL in a way is toned it down in terms of its future role in monitoring violations. But UNIFIL also, I think, managed to bring people together from the militaries of Israel and Lebanon in the past to discuss the land border, the 13 points that you mentioned, and it can, through the security lens, help create political progress or increase the engagement between people and for Israel and Lebanon. So when we look at the political motivation or potential of UN agencies, I think we see much more space to grow. Now, it all goes back to the second part of your question, which is the traditional problem that Israel has with the UN. And you mentioned some of the very recent examples that are very stark ones that receive a lot of attention. But if you look at the history of Israel-UN relations, you see that many of those attitudes are there for a long time. And there are multiple reasons for that. You know, first is the Israeli mindset that is emphasizing the need for self-reliance. So Israel will decide upon itself how to take care of its security challenges and will not abide by what other groupings or countries tell it to do. Okay, that's kind of within the Israeli mindset. There is an Israeli concern of multilateral organization as such, seeing them as places through which pressure on Israel to change policies is often carried out. And the UN definitely falls within that category. But we have other issues. We have the history of Israel and the UN. Of course, Israel was established after a vote in the UN on the partition plan back in 1947. But in the mid-70s, there was this resolution equating Zionism and racism that painted the UN in the Israeli debate in a very negative way. And then, of course, the accusation of the UN being more critical to Israel than other countries, conduct and statements by different actors within the UN system and how they are perceived in Israel. And finally, there's domestic politics, okay, because people play politics both in the UN and in Israel, sometimes against each other. And you see that in the way even speeches by Israeli officials, including in the UNGA, are being framed. You see it by reaction to special envoys from the UN. It's not only about now Guterres. Remember Robert Seri? He was the special coordinator in Jerusalem back then and also was boycotted at the time by the Israeli foreign minister, I think, Avigdor Lieberman. So we have a history of that. But there's also positive examples, and I would like to note the former special coordinator, Nikolai Mladenov, who was based in Jerusalem, representing the UN, and received much opening within the Israeli government than other officials did, especially because he had an impact on toning down tensions between Israel and Hamas in real time. That was when Trump was president back then, and American diplomacy did not really work, but also because he managed to communicate in a way that opened doors within the Israeli government, what we didn't see, I think, recently. So that's kind of the background for all this criticism, and it goes back to security and whether the Israeli assumption is that you can trust whether UNRWA and what we saw from links between some individuals involved in October 7 and UNRWA and in UNIFIL, and whether it stopped Hezbollah trying to create all this infrastructure. So there's a lot of question marks on that. But the UN is much bigger than these two agencies, and I think that should be remembered.
Thank you. Let's go back to the UNIFIL. How can you imagine the enforcing of the ceasefire? I mean, we start today, we have 2 months. Maybe there will be violations. What are, in your opinion, on the basis of your experience, the main challenges?
What I want to say is that UNIFIL or all the other peacekeeping missions around the world will do what the Council tells it to do, no more, no less. So the main responsibilities belong to the Security Council to discuss, and if there is a necessity to have another resolution. Otherwise, let me say there's a few points that we can stress. For sure, we needed to adapt or to change the rule of engagement. First of all, I think it's important to create a group of friends, I mean, the member states that can help the process and can keep the process alive, I mean, and able to reach an agreement. In 2022, Israel and Lebanon signed an agreement to establish a maritime border. Yeah. Well, so means that it's possible to do that. So why are not doing the same for the ground border? And the blue line, why it is impossible to define the blue line in a proper way? And this is the first step. So I mean, we need a group of member states that is helping also Lebanon and to create a proper authority, state authority, and the sovereignty. Lebanese armed forces has to keep control all Lebanon, especially that was also written in the 1701. It's not, but never reached the number that was written in the 1701. And now is the time to do that. We have to also to thank the government of Italy that is leading one of the process to increase the capability of the Lebanese armed forces. In terms of the tactical...
Sorry, then you will continue. Sorry to interrupt. Do you imagine or do you think it would be good, a bigger role of Italy, I mean, in this process?
I mean, it's Italy is, we have the second largest contingency in the UNIFIL. The first is Indonesia, the second is Italy. We're still maintaining troops, helicopters since 1979 in Lebanon, so Italy can play a role. That is exactly what happened a few days ago. I think that, I mean, we have to reinforce the Lebanese armed forces capabilities and exercise the full control of the states. So the Lebanese armed forces has a key role to establish and to maintain the ceasefire. At the tactical level, let me say that in terms of rural engagement, we need more accountability. So I mean that is when UNIFIL is asking to investigate, we need an answer. And also the private property as something that it has to be rewritten. So I mean the Lebanese armed forces has to be allowed with UNIFIL to get inside the private property immediately and not after months. And we need to restart the blue line marking. That is a good process to redefine the contentious point. And so it's not difficult. I mean, the important thing is the responsibilities belong to the parties. If the parties want to do that, UNIFIL can help immediately. because we have the power to do that. So if the government of Lebanon wants to control all the country with the Lebanese forces, please do it. We can help it. So we help Lebanon. For many years, we create, I mean, as we say, the civic activities. So we help also the community and 140 different villages on the south. So we are dealing with the municipality every day. So we are helping the Lebanese armed forces with also, as Italy in bilateral way with many other countries, but also UNIFIL is helping the Lebanese armed forces. What we need is the strong Lebanese armed forces and to, you know, reassess the balance of power inside Lebanon and Israel that will be allowed to mark the blue line in a proper way and with empathy, let me say. So UNIFIL can draw a line that could be a proper border when the ceasefire will be signed in the future.
There is also a lot of people. I was at the phone with Beirut this morning. Many people are going back to the south, despite the fact that both the Lebanese government and Israel said it's too early. Anyway, we will see empathy. It's a good word to for the time that is left to us to give you the...
Sure, and I think there are three dimensions in which the UN can make more of a positive impact on regional diplomacy, because we are talking about specific conflicts, but one of the benefits of the United Nations is that it is represented throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. It has the offices in Cyprus, it has the office in Lebanon, it has the office, you know, in Jerusalem, it has special envoys also to Syria. So there is a very strong UN presence within the Eastern Mediterranean, but it's not seeing all of that interconnected. And at a time when even the European Union is moving to acknowledge the importance of the Mediterranean. Now there is a commissioner for the Mediterranean. There will be a DG Med perhaps in the new commission. The UN could put this hat of, we are in the East Med, and we can contribute to connect the dots between the different conflicts, because there's a lot of convergences. When you talk about the maritime border deal between Israel and Lebanon, there are a lot of lessons that are relevant to the Cyprus conflict, to the development of the Gaza Marine natural gas field on the shores of Gaza. So Mediterraneanism, I think, is something that the UN can play. Also the issue of multilateralism. So the UN is representing the multilateral system, but a lot of the engagement between Israel and its neighbors, including, by the way, Lebanon, is happening through minilateral and multilateral settings that are non-UN related. The East Med Gas Forum, the Climate Change Initiative of the Republic of Cyprus, and there's a space that multilateralism sometimes does not live up to its potential. There is now a global alliance for the two-state solution, but is it effective or not? So the UN can provide some guidance on effective multilateralism. And finally, it is a space for civil society to engage, because all of those empathetic engagement that are needed now to transform ceasefire deals into lasting diplomatic processes and prospects of peace require non-officials to engage with each other. On Israel-Palestine, it's easier because we have a lot of NGOs doing dialogue work for years. The UN headquarters in Jerusalem is hosting those and can do that more. But goes the same on Israel-Lebanon, and enabling people from both sides to meet under a UN auspice, perhaps in Nicosia and not in the region, but make that like one of the goals to enhance this engagement, because that engagement will be the key for understanding and for future agreements with this leadership or the next one that we will have back home.
And
I don't know if I have 30 seconds more, but it's a razor and an important thing, because I mean, in UNIFIL, it's also the head of UNIFIL is leading the tripartite mechanism. Tripartite is a unique forum where the IDF and the Lebanese armed forces are one in the same room, one in front of the other one. So that is the...
It was applied,
it's incredible.
Before
because
the 8th of October.
In the same room that we will discuss violations, both of them. I mean, and how we needed to revitalize with a proper way the tripartite, like the unique, system, also to have more, in terms of more power to, in order to allow the commander of UNIFIL to impose what has been decided in all of the tripartite mechanism, using liaison officers that both in both countries, but using also the two armies or to the defense headquarters in order to implement what is decided inside the security, inside the tripartite. That is not now is impossible.
Thank you. The wish of all of us is that this truce is going to be consolidated in something more, let's say, in a peace negotiation, both in Lebanon and in something in Gaza, that must not be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you very
for
much.
sharing with us your comments and your evaluation, and thank to the public for being with us.